Hi everyone, you're listening to Express Sports Podcast and you're listening to Game Time with me, Mihir Vasavda.
And Amit Kamath.
And today we'll be talking about an issue that's paralyzed, might be a strong word, but it has totally gripped the sporting consciousness of the country. We have India's top wrestlers, two Olympic medalists, Sakshi Malik and Bajrang Punia, and the World Championship medalist, two-time World Championship medalist, in fact, Vinesh Phogat, who have been protesting in the streets of the capital for the entire week. They hit the streets last Sunday. They're at it even now. We are recording this on a Friday afternoon, and maybe in a couple of hours from now, the Supreme Court will be hearing their case. So we don't know what's exactly happened there, but it is a situation that has shook the consciousness of many an athlete. We've seen a flurry of tweets coming in throughout the day in support of the wrestlers who are demanding an FIR against the current president of the Wrestling Federation of India, Brij Bhushan Sharan Singh, who is also a BJP MP. The wrestlers, to sum it up in a nutshell, have accused Brij Bhushan of sexual harassment and criminal intimidation in their complaint at a police station in New Delhi. 7 women wrestlers have filed this complaint, and the 3 wrestlers who are protesting at Jantar Mantar in New Delhi are alleging that none of their grievances are being heard either by the federation or the government or the Indian Olympic Association. Now, there are too many threads to this. We'll try to address each one of it. But Amit, your first impressions, your first thoughts on this issue.
Now, Mihir, I know you mentioned that there are 3 wrestlers who are protesting. But these are not just 3 ordinary wrestlers. These are the face of Indian wrestling for the last 5-10 years. We have somebody who's been a medalist for India at the Rio Olympics. We've had somebody who's been a medalist for India at the Tokyo Olympics. We've had somebody who's won a medal for India at the World Championships of Wrestling. So these 3 athletes that are protesting, Vinesh Phogat, Bajrang Punia, and Sakshi Malik, are obviously somebody who have a lot of standing in wrestling circles. And just to be clear, you just look at the way the thing has escalated. You spoke about how everybody is on Twitter now, showing support. But even when there was very limited support, it took a lot of guts from these athletes to, go to Jantar Mantar again once after they had.
Yeah, the support came now.
Yeah, correct. So they've been kind of waging a lone battle. Now we are hearing of, the Supreme Court is going to take cognizance of the matter. Khap Panchayats are apparently sending support to Jantar Mantar. We are hearing of athletes like Neeraj Chopra. Obviously, Kapil Dev and Abhinav Bindra was somebody who tweeted yesterday. But besides that, we're seeing a lot of athletes who are now coming out in support of them, from Nikat Zareen to Neeraj. All of them started today. Until yesterday, there was very, very limited support. And at one point, it did start to feel like there were more people against them, because
Yeah.
you had somebody like a PT Usha, who's a legend in.
What a statement to make that was.
Correct. I mean, imagine a PT Usha who's been there, done that, who's come through the ranks, who's now been elevated as the chief of the Indian Olympic Association, to say that, wrestlers protesting on the streets tarnishes the image of India and Indian sport. I think that kind of reflects the fact that we have forgotten our history to such an extent that the word satyagraha doesn't mean a lot to us.
Yeah, I mean, imagine if those words were said back then. And my problem with this whole take that PT Usha had, I mean, all right, we respect it's her opinion and all of that, but she has dealt with the system. 4 months ago, when she became the IR president, she was on this side. She was an athlete. And like we said, Ki, there are many threads to this entire debate. So the first thread that we should, I think, pick on, because you've mentioned it now, is this whole athlete, a good athlete being a good administrator, or just the fact that an athlete being an administrator. And if one of the legends of Indian sport across sports has a very little sensitivity to this, then I mean, it just shows that athletes need not necessarily be good administrators as well. I mean, essentially what PT Usha means is that allegations of sexual harassment are okay, but to protest about it, that is a matter of indiscipline, which is disturbing. And not just her, I mean, sitting next to her at the Olympic Bhavan in New Delhi while talking to the media was Kalyan Chaubey, a former footballer who is the head of All India Football Federation, who is the CEO, acting CEO of the Indian Olympic Association. So these are two athletes who have been given charge of India's topmost Olympic sporting body, forget Olympic body, and they hold these opinions, which is disturbing for me.
Absolutely. And Mihir, look at the other side. We spoke about how nobody's kind of responded or said things in support of wrestlers till today. In fact, in today's edition of the newspaper, the Indian Express carried some incredible quotes from Vinesh where she's talking about how all these athletes wish them when they win medals. When they win medals, it takes a matter of a few seconds for all these athletes to come on social media and tweet about how great upwards and onwards. I think that
Yeah,
was the
that's
phrase.
Magnificent. I mean,
Yeah.
she just said that upwards and onwards messages हमें लिख देते हो और आप एक support वाला message नहीं कर सकते हो. So
Absolutely. And Mir, just to look at the situation from yesterday to today, just to contrast it a little bit, Neeraj Chopra writes a 78-word tweet. That's all he has done, right? He's just written a 78-word tweet. He's already, I think, the second top trend on Twitter. And this is on a day when, the Jia Khan case has, the verdict
Yeah.
has been delivered. I think Ponniyin Selvan, I think, is getting released, if I'm not mistaken. So there is a lot happening everywhere else. For Neeraj Chopra to put out a 78-word tweet and suddenly for it to become the top trend speaks a lot of the
power of the
power
athlete.
that an
Yeah.
athlete wields.
Yeah.
And for some
Absolutely.
reason, they've been very, very, very
Silent.
hesitant
Yeah.
to wield it.
Yeah, yeah. And look, this isn't a media trial, right? I mean, हम ये नहीं कह रहे कि ब्रिजभूषण गलत है, athlete सही है. That's not the point here. The point is that serious allegations have been made. They've not been made right now. They've been made 3 months ago in January. And these are allegations of sexual harassment, also involving minor athletes. So the ideal thing should have been, and look, I mean, whatever we say, this situation wouldn't have arisen had the government taken proper action in the first place, right? In January, just to sum it up, the first time when these wrestlers protested, the government swung into action back then. They assured that whatever, they'll form a committee which was headed by another legendary athlete, MC Maricom. That committee was supposed to look into these allegations and submit their report in 4 weeks time. This was on January 23rd. 4 weeks तभी कहा गया था कि हम 4 week में एक report prepare करेंगे, and the basis of that report further action will be taken, whatever action would that be. Now the problem is they never fulfilled all these promises. Those 4 weeks turned into 6 weeks, 6 weeks turned into 8 weeks, 10 weeks, and 3 months later, exactly on April 23rd, is when the wrestlers returned to the protest site. And that is a problem. I mean, again, like, regardless of whether Brij Bhushan is guilty or not, the problem is that we have seen a trend where government agencies, we have seen SAI, Sports Ministry, all these agencies have always been very slow to react on sexual harassment complaints. There are a list of cases that we can do. So the problem lies there. कि अगर जो wrestlers have gone somewhere with their grievance, it should have been addressed first up.
Absolutely. And even more shockingly or alarmingly, you look at what has happened after the committee was constituted. We had Babita Phogat, who's related to the Phogats, obviously. She was included in the 5-person committee, which became a 6-person committee. She has now come out and claimed that when she had a report in her hand, she was not able to. That's what she claims. Obviously, we can't verify that, but she's claiming that she had a report in her hand and it was snatched out of her hand. Now that doesn't really inspire a lot of confidence, and maybe that was the spark. I know a lot of people might be thinking there must be this question in their minds: why are the athletes back on the streets again? We heard from the sports minister yesterday talking about how many hours he had spent, which again has been fact checked by the wrestlers themselves. But yeah, so the IOA is saying that, you should have come to us, or you should have gone to the internal complaints committee. Sports Ministry is saying that I sat with you guys, I tried to resolve all your matters, we've put in place mechanisms, checks and balances. So why are you back on the streets again? Now, the bigger problem about this is when you have a Babita Phogat in the committee who is also related to the athletes, and she tells you that, I was not allowed to read the whole book, and 3 months later, you've still not heard about what is happening with the committee. Obviously, your faith in the committee is going to be shaken a little bit,
Yeah.
which kind of explains why, they are back on the streets.
And that's the whole problem, the transparency bit. The least that can be done right now is to address all the questions transparently. All the government needs to do is release the full contents of the probe committee report. That can be very tough to kind of present their case as well. They have said earlier this week in a letter to the IOA that the contents of the report are being examined. They have not elaborated, but they did give three major findings, which we discussed it in a three things episode earlier this week, and we've covered it elaborately. But just to kind of sum it up, on those major findings that they're saying, the government is totally silent on the allegations of sexual harassment. In fact, they're going into the structural flaws. They're saying things like the WFI there was no internal complaints committee as per the POSH Act. There was no grievance redressal mechanism. And then they're saying that there should be proper communication means between the federation and the athlete. So they're skirting the key issue here. And that really doesn't inspire confidence.
It really doesn't. But the other thing is, what do the wrestlers do when you have your own federation, which is the top of your federation is kind of, you have a complaint about him. Where do you go? Do you go to the IOA when now, Mir, do you think because of whatever has happened, whatever we've seen in this particular case so far, the faith of the athletes in going to something like the IOA is also going to be kind of shaken?
I don't know about that. I hope not, because I don't want to be too pessimistic about it and thoda sa ye. But look, agar jo hum back then ki baat kare, if we are talking about January, it wasn't even 1 month that the IOA body had taken charge, right? They were also new in the office, and PT Usha says that they could have come to IOA, we could have resolved it. Well, they did go to the IOA in January. There were talks. IOA also formed a committee which was again headed by Maricom, and that report is still not submitted. So it's been 4 months, 3 months, whatever, and IOA also hasn't really acted much. So I don't know what to say in this, because
And-
IOA doesn't come out in great colors. Same is the ministry.
In fact, what Vinesh is saying is even more alarming. She's saying that we tried to reach out to a bunch of members from the IOA, including PT Usha, and she's not responded to any of the messages. She's not answered their calls.
No, of course, yeah. And again, like थोड़ा सा अगर जो हम step back ले लें and look at it from the wrestler's point of view. Many people are saying कि क्यों आ रहे ये लोग अभी बाहर? 10 years के allegations. So just to kind of brief take on what are the allegations. Of course, there is no official document. Our reporters spoke to the sources in police on the basis of the police complaint filed on April 21, I think it was last Friday. The allegations are serious. They're saying that there are 7 different police complaints by women wrestlers. They're saying that the sexual harassment cases date as far back as 2012 to as recent as 2022. At least 4 incidents took place at Brij Bhushan Singh's MP bungalow in New Delhi, which is also the headquarters of the Wrestling Federation of India. There are instances, they say, that took place outside India. Some took place in India during tournaments on both cases. So these are all serious complaints. I have heard a lot of people saying that this is politically motivated and blah, blah, blah. We don't know. I can't say for sure कि ये politically motivated नहीं है.
In fact, initially, I think the wrestlers did do a good job at keeping away politics. They, in fact, sent back a couple of politicians and said that, we don't want political colors to the protest. It's only now that they've realized that maybe they also need some support from whatever faction or whatever support systems they can muster support from. So I don't know what people mean when they say that, it was not it is a politically motivated protest, because initially it was not. When it began, it was not a political, and they made an effort to actually keep out politicians. I believe.
Yeah. Brinda Karat was told right up.
Correct.
Yeah. So.
And me, just to look at the other side of the allegations, I want to talk about this one very, very surreal, bizarre video that I think the man in the eye of the storm has put out, Mr. Brij Bhushan Sharan Singh. He's responded in a way to the allegations. And, he's spoken about how when his sangharsh karne ki क्षमता समाप्त हो जाएगी, and when he feels like लाचार and महसूस and he feels like a बेचारा, at that point he would not like जिंदगी जीना पसंद नहीं करूंगा. That's what he said. And he said that ऐसी जिंदगी के पहले मुझे मृत्यु के करीब आ जाना पसंद होगा, which is, I mean, it's a very weird sort of.
Yeah, I mean, it is. And without taking any sides, if we were to kind of, you said, who are these protesters, right? 2 Olympic medalists, 1 world championship medalist. For 10 years, they've constantly been winning something for the country. They all come from very humble backgrounds. Their stories of struggle are well recorded. And they're taking on a man who, on Friday morning again, these are all allegations again. But this is a man jiske against, according to a poster that's been hanged. It's hanging at Jantar Mantar today. There are 38 criminal cases against him.
There are 38 active criminal complaints
against him. Then a video emerged on Friday morning of an old interview where he's saying कि वो लोग तो जो कहेंगे करेंगे, मैं आपको कहता हूँ मैंने एक मर्डर किया हुआ है. There is a video.
Very humble brag.
Honest. And then he is a strong man. We know, both of us have covered wrestling pretty closely, and we've seen how in the last 10 years he's controlled the federation. He is basically the final authority, the last word on all things Indian wrestling. Vinesh,
in fact, bouts stop when he walks in in the middle of a tournament. Bouts stop so that wrestlers can charge up to him and touch his feet and stuff.
And if he feels कि गलत point दिया है, he'll stop the bouts there and he'll change the points and whatever. We're talking about एक proper जो हम movies में देखते हैं ना, बाहुबली वाला एक character. उस type का एक character है. And this is the guy the wrestlers are taking on. He is, of course, a BJP MP, 5-time BJP MP. The other time, the 6th time he was an MP, he was for the Samajwadi Party. He comes from a very politically important state, Uttar Pradesh. And there is, again, a very nice story by one of Express's finest reporters, Shamlal Yadav, which explains why the BJP is reluctant to take action against Brij Bhushan. And I think it's a must-read story. It also puts the whole political situation in perspective behind this debate. So it's a fascinating story because we are talking about athletes' rights at one end. In India, we rarely see athletes, be it at small level or the highest level, take on the administrators who feel जिनका impunity एकदम मतलब अलग level का है.
To be fair, right now they're not even just restricting themselves to taking on Brij Bhushan Sharan Singh.
They've taken top excellence of the government.
They've fact-checked the sports minister at some point today. So that kind of shows that they are basically not restrained anymore.
They are not. And that's why it's so fascinating. We'll, of course, be tracking this story. We haven't certainly heard the last of it. In a few hours from now, the Supreme Court will be hearing. So we'll see what happens there. And do, of course, listen to the next episode of Game Time and read the stories. But before we bid farewell for today, Shashank Bhargava, our producer, is here. Shashank, how have you been looking at this whole controversy? What are your thoughts?
So one of the things that, you mentioned that after what Neeraj Chopra said, we saw that trending on Twitter, and I've been obviously keeping up with it, reading our stories and what other media places are reporting. But do you think, apart from, the Twitterverse, people in general, not just Delhi, but other parts of the country know about the story enough, are caring about it? Do we have any idea?
Outside Delhi, I don't think I mean, it's reaching now. Now that a number of athletes, Vinesh Phogat, I mean, her story again, like we've been talking about stories that are must read. I think her hard hitting quotes on the athletes' silence is a must read story. And coincidentally, the morning that story came out on the Indian Express website on Friday, we've had a string of athletes who have spoken up. And we're talking about cricketers like Harbhajan Singh, tennis stars like Sania Mirza, Neeraj, like Amit mentioned. Before that, you had Kapil Dev and Abhinav Bindra.
Nikhil Zareen.
Yeah, Nikhil Zareen. So, I mean, the more the number of athletes are talking about it, it's spreading, the word is spreading. And then you also, look at political leaders. Like, again, we discussed earlier in this episode, they did not want a political color to this protest earlier, but this time, just so that there is this sustained pressure to take action, they've also invited politicians. And I'm guessing in the coming days, more politicians might be visiting to the site.
So scolding PT Usha in a way for her stance as the IOA chief and for being a former athlete who's kind of now, rather than standing with her own kind athletes, she's actually gone ahead and tried to pull him down. And he's actually, you look at it that way, that it's not just a Delhi, Haryana protest anymore. It's now becoming something that a Kerala MP is actually telling a Kerala legend to show some support for these athletes. So it's kind of spreading in a way, right? And thanks to social media apps.
Yeah, I definitely think more athletes, especially people from the sports field, should definitely be speaking out about it, because it is really sad. I mean, it is really sad that once again these people have to come out and protest at Jattar Mantar just so that some significant action can be taken up about this issue, right? Like, I think it's really sad that India's top athletes are just having to do this. And yeah, I just hope that the government listens to them and takes the necessary steps that are needed.
Absolutely. And who knows, this could be one of those pivotal moments in Indian sport where the power imbalance between athletes and administrators, it changes. And it's encouraging because as we are speaking, the number of tweets that are coming out in the support of the wrestlers, it just keeps on increasing. Like Amit is showing me Virender Sehwag, Irfan Pathan. And these are just in the last 20 seconds, some of the cricketers who have come up in the support. Deepak Lathar, the boxer.
Anish Bhanwala, the shooter. So now it's properly a deluge of support. Earlier, I think they were a little cagey about what they should say. But maybe it was... Shashank, there is a sporting metaphor in a way. The guys who've shown us the way, Kapil Dev, the first World Cup winner for India, was one of the first cricketers to actually tweet. Abhinav Bindra, who was the first gold medalist for India, was the first to tweet. Second, I believe there were a couple of them, but then a full-fledged...
Shiva Keshwan, the winter sports flag bearer.
Correct, who's I think gone to 6 Winter Olympics by himself?
Yeah.
And on Twitter, I saw some people at least saying that, Sachin Tendulkar should speak out. Like, why isn't he speaking out? He's the biggest sporting personality of India, and I wonder if he will.
I mean, that obviously is a matter for the athlete to decide whether they want to speak out about something or not. Which, I mean, we obviously don't want to get into what the athlete wants to say. I mean, at least I don't want to get into what an athlete says.
He should say.
He should speak up. Yeah. But, I mean, if he does not, it's fine. Because sometimes I think from the sidelines, we maybe don't understand the pressures that these guys are under.
I mean, it's just a simple thing here. It's a simple thing where athletes, 7 women athletes, have accused someone of sexual harassment, and all they're demanding is a probe. They're not saying that, you whatever. I mean, ek probe to ho hi sakta. So that's the whole thing. But I think let's see how this story proceeds further. We'll be keeping a close track of it, like I mentioned, on all platforms of the Indian Express. So keep following us. And we'll be bringing you with all the latest. Thanks for listening to today's episode of Game Time. We'll be back next week.
You were listening to Express Sports by the Indian Express. This week's show was edited and mixed by Abhishek Kumar and produced by me, Shashank Bhargava. If you like the show, then do subscribe to us wherever you get your podcasts. You can also recommend the show to someone you think will like it, share it with a friend or someone in your family. It's the best way for people to get to know about us. You can also tweet us at Express Audio and write to us at podcasts@indianexpress.com.